It all started with a dare. Not just any dare, but the dare, the kind that alters your marriage, your identity, and the very way you look at the woman you thought you knew. We were in Vegas. Neon lights everywhere, that buzzing hum of slot machines underscoring every conversation, and the unmistakable energy of people desperate to feel alive. My wife, Natalie, looked stunning that night, in a way that made other men stare just a little too long. Her red dress clung to her curves like it had been painted on, the slit at her thigh almost too high, and her dark hair spilled down in soft curls she rarely bothered with back home. Her eyes sparkled with mischief, or maybe tequila, or both. It was supposed to be a weekend getaway. No kids, no work, no stress. Just us and a couple of her girlfriends from college. A sort of reunion, if you could call it that. I knew I'd be the odd one out, but I figured I could roll with it. Natalie and I had always been strong, or at least I believed that. But that night, in the golden glow of the Bellagio lounge, something shifted. Something snapped. We were all gathered around a cocktail table near the casino floor. Her friends, Sasha, Amber, and Lila, were already a few drinks deep. They laughed louder than usual, their voices slicing through the thick Vegas air. Natalie had that look on her face, the one that usually preceded bad ideas. "I'm telling you," she said, twirling the straw in her martini glass. "I could seduce any guy in this place if I wanted to." The other girls hooped like cheerleaders. "Oh, please," Amber snorted. "Don't act like you still got it like that." Natalie raised her eyebrow. "Want a bet?" That's when the money came out. Lila slapped down a $100 bill. Sasha followed. Even Amber added to the pot, though she was clearly skeptical. Natalie turned to me, lounging in the nearby booth with my bourbon, and winked. "Babe, back me up." I chuckled. "You flirting with strangers for cash now?" "Oh, come on," she said. "Just a harmless game. Little ego boost." Harmless. That word would echo in my head for weeks. I watched, half amused, as Natalie surveyed the room. And then she locked eyes on him. Tall, clean cut, late 30s maybe. He had that Wall Street edge, wearing a tailored jacket like it was part of his skin. And he looked at her just long enough. She stood, downed the rest of her martini, and said, "Watch and learn." I should have stopped her. Instead, I let it play out, laughing along with the rest of them as she strutted across the floor like a lioness on the prowl. She approached him confidently, hips swaying, hand brushing his shoulder as she leaned in to whisper something in his ear. He smiled. She smiled back. And then they were gone. At first, I assumed they'd just walked somewhere quieter to flirt. Maybe to prove the point, collect the win, and return triumphant. But as the minutes ticked on, and then the hours, my stomach churned. Her friends started making excuses. She probably got distracted. She might be gambling somewhere. She's not actually going to do anything. But their voices lacked conviction. Sasha looked downright uncomfortable. I tried calling her. No answer. Texted. Nothing. I wandered the casino floor twice. Checked the bar. Even walked out onto the street, thinking maybe she went for air. Still nothing. It was 1:36 a.m. when she finally walked into our suite. Her makeup was slightly smudged, hair tousled in a way that wasn't natural. Her red dress clung tighter, damp at the chest like it had been pressed against someone else. And her eyes, they wouldn't meet mine. "Where the hell have you been?" I asked, my voice already fraying at the edges. She froze at the doorway, guilt flashing across her face. "I was just around." "Around?" I stood up, every muscle in my body taut. "You disappeared for 3 hours after making a bet that you could seduce a stranger, and you expect me to believe you were around?" She looked down, kicked off her heels, and walked past me like I was a ghost. "Don't do this now," she mumbled. I caught her wrist. "Did you sleep with him?" Silence. She didn't even try to lie. "I won the bet," she said softly, like that explained anything. "The girls owe me $200. There was no apology, no remorse, just a twisted smirk, like this was some drunken sorority stunt, and I was the buzzkill for reacting. I stared at her. My wife. My partner. The woman I had loved since we were both broke, stupid, and madly in love. She'd gone and fucked a stranger just to prove a point. To win. My heart dropped through the floor. "You cheated on me for a joke," I said, barely hearing my own voice. "It wasn't cheating," she snapped, suddenly defensive. "It was a dare, okay? It didn't mean anything." "I don't give a damn what it meant. You still did it." Natalie folded her arms. "God, you're being so dramatic." I laughed. Actually laughed. That bitter, hollow kind of laugh you only let out when everything you thought was true turns out to be a lie. You're unbelievable. She rolled her eyes and walked into the bathroom, shutting the door with a snap. And just like that, my marriage cracked in half, right there on the 23rd floor of the Bellagio. While outside, Sin City pulsed on with its noise, its chaos, and its endless temptations. I stood there in a deafening silence, looking at the empty space where trust used to be. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even lie down. I sat on the couch, bourbon in hand, staring at the skyline. And something cold started to take root in my chest. Not just betrayal, but fury. A dark, simmering kind of rage I'd never felt before. The kind that whispered in my ear, "You can break her too." And in that moment, something inside me clicked. If she wanted to play games, I could play too. Back home, the Las Vegas sun was a distant memory, replaced by cold hardwood floors, silent dinners, and the thick tension of a relationship on life support. Natalie acted like nothing had happened. She unpacked her suitcase that Sunday night as if she hadn't just detonated our marriage 48 hours earlier, folded her red dress, the one she wore when she cheated, and hung it in the closet next to the blouse she'd worn to our first anniversary dinner. No difference. No line between what was sacred and what was sick. I didn't say much. Not at first. I kept my silence like a loaded gun. But inside, I was breaking. She made coffee Monday morning, humming some tune like we hadn't left pieces of our trust scattered all over that Vegas suite. I sat at the kitchen island, fingers tapping against the mug, watching her move around the kitchen like a stranger. Her body was familiar, but the soul behind it? Unrecognizable. "You're quiet," she said, glancing over. "Yeah," I replied, sipping black bitterness. "Lot on my mind." She rolled her eyes. "If this is still about the Vegas thing." "Still?" I slammed my mug down. "The Vegas thing?" I said slowly, my voice hard. "You mean the night you climbed into a stranger's bed to win a bar bet?" She set the coffee pot down, jaw tightening. "It was a dare, okay? I told you. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't some affair. It was stupid, and it's over." "You keep calling it stupid like that makes it better." "It does make it better," she snapped, turning to face me. "It wasn't love. It wasn't months of lies. It was one night, fueled by tequila and poor decisions. One night that broke us." She scoffed. "God, you're so sensitive." Something inside me twisted. Sensitive. That word, sharp as glass. I stood slowly, walking around the island to stand in front of her. "You think this is about sensitivity?" I said. I watched my wife strut across a casino floor like she was single, like she didn't belong to anyone. Then she disappeared, for hours, and when she came back, she smelled like sex and someone else's cologne. "And you've got the audacity to act like I'm the problem?" Natalie crossed her arms, defiant. "I'm not going to apologize forever, Mark. I already said I was sorry." "No, you didn't. You justified it. You rationalized it. You blamed the booze, the moment, your friends, everything except yourself." "Oh, so now I'm some kind of monster?" she barked. "Because I made one mistake?" "One." I laughed bitterly. "If I went to a strip club and got a lap dance, you'd flip. If I so much as flirted with a bartender, you'd be in therapy by lunch. But you had sex, Natalie. And you did it for fun, for cash. Do you understand how insane that is?" She didn't answer, just stared at me with those icy, narrowed eyes like she was calculating her next move. "I loved you," I said, quieter now. "God help me, I still do. But you killed something in me that night. You stepped on it and walked away like it didn't matter." Natalie looked at me, then down at the counter. Her fingers trembled slightly as she gripped the edge, but instead of remorse, she gave me something else. "Then leave," she said flatly. "What? You're not happy. I'm not begging. So go." I blinked. "You really want to play that card? You think you're the only one hurting?" she hissed. "You've been cold, distant for months. You haven't touched me like you used to. You've been living in your head, not here with me." My jaw clenched. "So this is my fault now?" "I'm just saying maybe you pushed me further than you think." The world stopped spinning for a second. My vision tunneled. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. And then I said it. Words I hadn't planned. Words born from a place so dark I didn't even know it existed. "Fine," I muttered. "I bet I can make your sister fall in love with me in a week." Silence. A beat passed. Then another. Natalie blinked, then laughed. A hard, sarcastic sound that stung more than any slap. You, she scoffed. Please. She's 26, single, and has actual taste. She's not going to fall for your sulking, sensitive little sad boy routine. I stepped forward, my expression unreadable. You sure about that? Oh my God, she muttered, shaking her head. You're serious? I didn't answer. She tilted her head. Wow. Okay, Mark. Go ahead. Seduce my little sister. Show me how petty and pathetic you really are. You gambled with our marriage, I said. I'm just learning the rules. She stared at me for a long moment, the mocking smile slowly fading from her face. I could see the uncertainty starting to bloom. Not fear, not yet, but the kind of hesitation that creeps in when you realize you've underestimated someone. Do it, she said finally. Let's see if you're as charming as you think. I walked past her without another word. She didn't follow. That night, we slept in separate rooms. She curled up on our king-sized bed like nothing had happened, while I laid on the stiff couch in the den, staring at the ceiling, counting every crack in the drywall. The game was on. I didn't want to play it, but she started it, and I had a feeling she wouldn't be smiling by the time it ended. 3 days passed. 3 long, heavy days. Natalie didn't bring up the argument again, and neither did I, but it hovered between us like a fog no one wanted to walk through. The air in the house was thick with resentment, unspoken words, and the kind of silence that wasn't peaceful. It was strategic. And then, on Thursday afternoon, fate delivered her to my front door. Claire, her younger sister. I heard the knock while I was halfway through my second cup of black coffee, scrolling half-heartedly through emails I had no intention of answering. When I opened the door, she stood there, suitcase in one hand, her oversized tan leather bag slung over the other shoulder, and that same radiant, slightly crooked smile I remembered from years ago. Hey, big brother-in-law, she said, giving me a playful nudge as she walked past. Hope you don't mind me crashing for a bit. I blinked. You're early. Change of plans, she said, setting the suitcase by the hall closet. I had a nightmare of a roommate situation. I just couldn't take another day. Of course. I remembered now. Natalie had mentioned her sister was coming to stay for a couple of weeks while she figured out her next move. Graduate school had burned her out, and her lease had ended 2 months too early. I texted Natalie earlier. Claire continued, pulling off her coat. She said you guys would be home. Is she out? I nodded. Jim, probably. She gave a small smirk. Right. Still chasing that post-cheating glow-up? My eyebrows lifted slightly. Claire always had a sharp tongue. Funny, observant, a little too perceptive for her own good. She and Natalie were almost opposites. Where Natalie was always polished, composed, a little cold, Claire had a softness to her. She wore her emotions close to the surface, and she never quite managed to keep her mouth shut when something felt wrong. She turned to me and tilted her head. So, how bad is it? I hesitated. You mean the marriage? No, she said, rolling her eyes. I meant the global economy. Of course I mean the marriage. I gave her a dry smile, then gestured toward the kitchen. You want coffee? She nodded and followed me in. As I poured her a mug, I noticed things I hadn't before, or maybe things I'd just never let myself see. Her laugh was softer now, more mature. She wasn't the 20-year-old girl who once got too drunk at our Christmas party and passed out on the couch. She'd grown into herself. There was a confidence in her eyes that hadn't been there before, and when she took the mug from me, her fingers brushed mine, warm, steady, aware. So, she said again, sitting across from me at the kitchen table, you gonna tell me what happened, or am I supposed to pretend I haven't heard from Sasha? I frowned. Sasha talked? Claire gave me a pleased look. She called me the morning after Vegas. Told me everything. Said Natalie treated it like a punchline. She did, I said, swallowing hard. She called it a stupid dare. Claire went quiet for a moment, staring into her mug. I never thought she'd do something like that. I didn't respond. She's always been impulsive, she added. But this, I don't know. It's next level. She crossed a line, I said flatly, and she laughed when she did it. Claire's eyes met mine. And you? What about me? I heard you made a bed of your own. That made me pause. She sipped her coffee, waiting. I leaned back, folding my arms. You think I'm a monster now? No, she said calmly. I think you're angry, and hurt, and maybe not thinking clearly. Maybe, I said, though I didn't really believe that. But I said it, and I meant it. Claire set her mug down. You said you'd make me fall in love with you. The way she said it, not accusing, but curious. I studied her, and she held my gaze. Well, I'm here. I wasn't sure how to respond to that. She stood up, stretched, and offered a light smile. Where do I sleep? Guest room, I said quickly, trying to clear the tension. Down the hall. Bathrooms across. She nodded. Cool. I'll unpack later. I think I need a nap. She walked out, her hips swaying in a way that felt new, confident, intentional. I wasn't sure, but I watched her go longer than I should have. That evening, Natalie came home to find us watching a movie in the living room. Claire was curled up on the armchair with a blanket. I was on the couch, nursing a beer. When Natalie walked in, she looked between us like she was trying to measure the space between our bodies. She smiled tight. Hey, sis. Hey, Claire said, barely looking up. Everything okay? Natalie asked, directed at me. Peachy, I said. She bit her lip. I could see the effort it took for her to swallow her comment. Claire stood, stretching again, this time with a little smirk aimed directly at her sister. I'm gonna crash early. It's been a week. Night, I said, eyes not leaving her. Night, Natalie echoed, arms crossed. When Claire disappeared down the hall, Natalie turned on me. You're seriously doing this? What? Playing this game? You said I couldn't, I said calmly. So now I'm curious. Her face twisted. You think I care if she flirts back? I don't need her to flirt, I said, standing up. I just need her to feel. Something you forgot how to do a long time ago. I walked past her, brushing her shoulder as I did. She didn't stop me, and I didn't look back. The house felt different with Claire in it. Lighter, somehow. Warmer. It had been so long since I'd heard someone laugh in this place without it feeling forced or tainted. The morning after she arrived, I made coffee earlier than usual. I didn't even need it yet. I just wanted to be in the kitchen when she came down. She walked in wearing one of those oversized college sweatshirts and tight black yoga pants, hair still damp from a shower. No makeup, no effort, and still beautiful. Smells good, she said, stretching. I brew it strong, I replied. Hope you're not one of those half-calf almond milk people. God, no, she laughed. Give me the real thing, or give me death. I slid her a mug and watched her blow across the surface before taking a sip. She gave a little satisfied sigh, the kind that made my stomach twist, just slightly. Natalie walked in moments later. Full face of makeup, tight sports bra, and leggings. I couldn't tell if she was dressed for the gym or wore. She looked at Claire, then at me. Morning. Claire didn't respond. Just took another sip of her coffee and leaned against the counter, eyes meeting mine. Natalie noticed. Oh, she said, that fake tone laced with challenge. Didn't realize this was a couple's breakfast. Claire laughed, light but cutting. Don't be weird, Nat. Natalie forced a smile and grabbed her protein shake from the fridge. I'm headed out. Of course, I muttered. No one here worth staying for. She froze mid-step, but didn't say anything. Just walked out, keys jangling behind her like little sparks of resentment. Claire raised an eyebrow. You two always this warm and fuzzy? You haven't seen half of it, I replied. Over the next few days, I made a point to be around more when Claire was. Not too much. Not in a way that could be flagged. But just enough. I learned her rhythm. When she liked her second cup of coffee, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous, how her voice lowered when she spoke about things that mattered. I started asking her about them. So what's next? I asked one afternoon. We were out on the back deck. She sat barefoot on the wicker chair, legs curled up beneath her, a paperback in hand. For what? You. Life. You staying here long? She shrugged. Don't know. Depends. On what? She looked at me, and for a moment, the air between us felt charged. How it feels to be here. I nodded slowly. And how does it feel? Claire smiled, slow and unreadable. Like maybe this is where I needed to be all along. I didn't touch her. Not once. But I started giving her compliments, small ones. The kind that could be passed off as brother-in-law banter, but had just enough weight to linger. You always had the best taste in music, I said one night, hearing her hum along to an old playlist in the kitchen. She laughed. That's because I had to survive Natalie's obsession with boy bands growing up. I developed immunity. You're better than her in a lot of ways, I said, then quickly added. I mean, she'd never admit it, but yeah, you are. Claire paused, then gave me that look again. Not shocked, not shy, just thoughtful. I noticed her posture changing around me too, more open. She'd lean on the counter when she talked, her hip tilted slightly. She'd laugh and touch my arm in that light, familiar way women do when they feel safe or tempted. Natalie saw it, and for a while, she ignored it, or pretended to. But by day 5, I caught her watching us. Her eyes narrowed whenever Claire and I were in the same room too long. When I laughed too loud. When Claire's hand lingered a second longer than necessary on my shoulder after I opened a jar for her. She didn't say anything, though. She assumed it was harmless. That made me dangerous. That evening, I cooked dinner, something I hadn't done in months. Grilled chicken, roasted potatoes, sautéed green beans. Nothing fancy, but it smelled like a home that still worked. Claire helped in the kitchen, sneaking bites of things as I plated them, offering her sarcastic reviews. 3 stars for presentation, she said, licking her finger. But flavor? 5. Generous, I said, especially coming from someone who used to live on microwave popcorn and boxed wine. I'm evolving. I looked at her. You are. Natalie came home halfway through the meal, catching us mid-laughter. She stopped in the doorway, blinking. Smells good. Claire turned. Mark made dinner. Can you believe it? Natalie forced a laugh and walked in. Wow. Haven't seen that since. What? Last anniversary? I didn't respond. We sat down, the 3 of us. One of the most uncomfortable dinners of my life. Claire tried to fill the silence with stories. Natalie chewed her food like it had offended her. I watched both of them like a man splitting a room in half. Halfway through the meal, Natalie spoke. So Claire, she said, stabbing a green bean with her fork. What are you really doing here? Claire blinked. I told you. I needed space. Natalie smirked. And this house felt like the best choice for that. Claire tilted her head. Is that a problem? Not at all, Natalie said, sipping her wine. It just seems strategic. Maybe it is, Claire replied, looking straight at me. The room froze for a breath. A long, slow breath. Then I stood, collected the plates, and said, I'll handle cleanup. Claire followed me to the kitchen. Natalie stayed at the table, pretending not to watch. Did I go too far? Claire whispered beside me. Not yet, I said. She leaned in just slightly. Her perfume, something citrusy and warm, hit me in a way I wasn't prepared for. And then she smiled. It wasn't flirtatious. It was something else. Complicit. It happened on a Thursday night. Not that I had planned it. Not that I expected anything more than another round of awkward tension and barely contained glances. But sometimes the line you swear you won't cross is closer than you realize, and one wrong step in the dark sends you plummeting. Natalie was gone. Out for drinks with coworkers, or so she claimed. I didn't ask. Didn't care. Her lies didn't sting the way they used to. If anything, they gave me space, and tonight, space was exactly what I needed. Claire had cooked. I'd offered, but she waved me off, saying she wanted to contribute. Something easy, spaghetti, salad, garlic bread. It was basic, but somehow more comforting than anything that had come out of that kitchen in months. We ate at the counter, not the table. She stood across from me in one of my old hoodies, navy blue, oversized, soft with wear, and I didn't have the heart to tell her it used to be Natalie's favorite. It looked better on Claire anyway. She leaned forward on her elbows, twirling pasta around her fork while we traded stories. That trip to Seattle, she said, laughing. Nat dragged me through 3 museums in one day. I thought my feet were going to fall off. Sounds like her, I replied. Plans everything down to the minute. I once scheduled a surprise date night, and she got pissed because it wasn't on the calendar. Claire grinned. God, yes. I remember. She used to color-code her planner like a psychopath. We laughed, and this time, it wasn't laced with bitterness. It felt light, easy. After dinner, she offered to help clean up. I waved her off and told her to relax, but she insisted. We moved together in sync, scraping plates, washing, drying, bumping shoulders as we passed each other in the narrow kitchen. There was music playing softly from her phone, some mellow acoustic track with a lazy rhythm. When she turned to hand me a plate, our hands brushed, fingers grazing, holding too long. We both paused. Her breath caught, just barely. Then she smiled, small, nervous, but not uncertain. You always look at me like that? She asked quietly. I tilted my head. Like what? Like you're trying not to. I didn't answer. I just looked at her. And this time, I didn't look away. The silence between us stretched, not awkward, not uncomfortable, just charged. like the pause before a storm, or the breath right before a kiss. Claire blinked slowly. You meant what you said, didn't you? I swallowed. Which part? That you could make me fall for you. I let the words hang there, unsure if I should say yes. Unsure if I already had. She broke the tension first, walking past me toward the living room. I'll grab the wine, she called over her shoulder. We never finished that bottle from last week. I followed her a moment later, 2 glasses in hand. She was already curled up on the couch under a fleece throw, bottle in her lap, remote in her hand. Movie, she asked. Sure. We settled on something neither of us cared about, just background noise. A romantic drama that we barely paid attention to. The room dimmed, only the TV casting flickers of light across her face. She sat closer than usual, her leg brushing against mine beneath the blanket. Her bare feet grazed my shin once. Then again. You're quiet, she said after a while, eyes on the screen. So are you. She turned to face me. Her hair fell loosely over one eye. I brushed it back without thinking. She didn't move away. You ever wonder how we got here? She whispered. All the time. She hesitated. And do you ever think, maybe it wasn't an accident? Our eyes met again. Closer now. The warmth of her body against mine. The smell of her skin, something soft, feminine, distinctly not Natalie. I think, I said carefully, some things are inevitable. She didn't respond. But she leaned in. Slowly. Deliberately. And I didn't stop her. Our lips met in a gentle, uncertain kiss. Just a brush, a taste. But it lingered, and when we broke apart, the air felt heavy, electrified. Neither of us moved. Then she kissed me again. Longer this time. Deeper. I let myself feel it. Her hand slid to my chest, fingers curling into the fabric of my shirt. My own hand cupped the side of her face, thumb brushing her cheek. It wasn't lust. Not entirely. It was something else. Something complicated and forbidden, and so damn real I could barely breathe through it. But then she pulled back, breath shaky. I'm sorry, she whispered. I shouldn't have. I shook my head. Don't. She looked at me, her eyes wide, vulnerable. This is so messed up. I nodded. Yeah, but I don't want to take it back. Neither did I. We sat there in silence, hearts pounding, the room spinning around us. Then she got up. I should go to bed. Yeah, I said, voice hoarse. Probably. She paused at the hallway. Good night, Mark. Good night, Claire. She disappeared into the shadows, and I was left sitting there, lips still tingling, head reeling. This was no longer a game. The bed had become something else. And for the first time since Vegas, I felt alive. After that kiss, something changed, not just in the air between us, but in the way we moved around each other. There was a new awareness. A pull. Something neither of us could name, but both of us felt like gravity. Claire didn't bring it up the next morning, and neither did I. But her cheeks flushed a little deeper when she walked into the kitchen, and I noticed her hands trembling slightly when she reached for her coffee. She wasn't wearing makeup, just one of my old t-shirts. One that clung in the right places and hung loose in others. Effortlessly sexy without meaning to be. Natalie was already gone. Off to yoga or brunch or someone else's attention. Who knew? All I knew was that her absence gave us room to breathe, and that absence was beginning to feel like a gift more than a wound. Sleep okay? I asked, handing Claire her mug. She nodded. Barely. Too much wine. Right? I said, smirking. Must have been the wine. She didn't respond, but her lips curled into a knowing smile before she took her first sip. For a moment, we just stood there, sipping coffee like we weren't wading chest deep into something we'd both regret. Or maybe not regret. Maybe just need. Later that day, I found reasons to linger near her. She was in the living room reading, and I sat on the other side of the couch, not touching, but close enough that our knees brushed whenever she shifted. She didn't move away. In fact, she adjusted once, just slightly, so that we were touching more directly. Casual, effortless, intentional. I asked about her book. She explained the plot with more passion than I expected, and I listened carefully, nodding at all the right moments. When she talked, I made sure I looked at her, really looked. Not the way a brother-in-law should. The way a man does when he's learning the angles of a woman he's beginning to crave. At one point, she laughed at something I said and touched my hand. Light, brief, but neither of us missed it. I swear the room felt warmer after that. That night, Natalie cooked dinner. That was rare enough to set off alarm bells. She laid out salmon, roasted vegetables, even opened a bottle of white. And the whole time she did it, she wore this smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. A performative domesticity. I could feel it. She was watching me. Watching us. Claire helped set the table. I noticed how her hand lingered against my back when she passed by. It wasn't blatant. It was the kind of touch that could be ignored. But Natalie noticed. We ate mostly in silence, save for a few attempts at small talk. At one point, Natalie leaned forward and said, "Claire, I'm surprised you're still here." Claire raised an eyebrow. "Why's that?" Natalie shrugged. "Just figured you'd get bored of playing house." I stepped in. "She's not playing anything." Natalie's eyes narrowed. "Oh, I'm sure she's playing something." Claire set down her fork, her voice calm. "You know, it's really interesting. For someone who says she's over what happened in Vegas, you sure seem tense." Natalie blinked. "Excuse me. You heard me." I tried not to smile. It was subtle, but the power dynamic was shifting, and Natalie knew it. Claire excused herself after dinner, saying she needed a walk. I watched her leave, her ponytail bouncing with each step, the hem of her dress brushing just above her knees. Natalie stood beside me at the sink. "You're actually doing it," she said coldly. I didn't answer. "You're trying to win your little bet." "No," I said, drying a plate. "I am winning it." She laughed, bitter and hollow. "She's not stupid, Mark. She's going to figure out what you're doing." I turned to face her. Maybe she already has. And maybe she doesn't care. Natalie stared at me, her facade faltering for just a second. "You're pathetic." "No," I said. "I'm just done pretending I'm okay with what you did." She didn't respond. And I didn't wait for one. The next few days felt like a silent countdown. Claire and I didn't talk about the kiss again, but we didn't need to. The way she looked at me told me everything I needed to know. Her smiles came easier. She'd lean on the doorframe when I was working, arms crossed, just watching me. She started texting me, silly things, songs, memes, things that made her laugh. And then deeper things. Late-night thoughts. Stories from her past. Moments she'd never shared with her sister. She told me she used to feel invisible around Natalie, like the shadow cast by someone louder, colder, harder. She said I was the first person who ever made her feel like she was seen. That night, we sat on the porch with 2 glasses of bourbon. Natalie was upstairs, pretending to read, but we both knew she was listening. "I used to watch you," Claire said softly. "Even back then. At family parties." I looked at her. "What do you mean? You were always so patient. With everyone. Even when Natalie bossed you around. Even when you weren't happy." I noticed. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I let her. The air was thick with summer and silence and things we weren't allowed to say. Eventually, I felt her hand slide into mine. And just like that, I knew I wasn't bluffing anymore. She was falling, and I was already gone. It was late. That hour where everything feels heavier, quieter, and more honest than it should. Natalie had gone to bed early, after another half-hearted argument about the thermostat. That's how it was now. The deeper Claire and I sank into our private world, the more Natalie clung to small things. The air conditioning, the grocery list, a missing towel, all distractions from the growing shadow she refused to name. Claire and I ended up in the kitchen again, long after the lights upstairs had gone dark. She was barefoot, her hair loose over her shoulders, wearing one of those soft tank tops that hugged just a little too closely. I didn't let myself look too long, but the tension between us had become something physical now. Breathing near her felt like standing too close to a flame. We sat at the island with half a bottle of red wine between us, passing the glass back and forth. She toyed with the stem, swirling what was left. Her eyes found mine in the dim light, and I swear something in her gaze had changed. Heavier, slower, intentional. "I can't sleep," she said softly. "Me neither." We sat in that quiet for a while. "Do you remember," she began, "that 4th of July when I got caught sneaking out of the guest room?" I laughed. "You were what, 19? Barely. I remember thinking I was so slick. And then I saw you standing in the hallway, just shaking your head." "I didn't tell Natalie," I said. "Could've, but didn't." "I know," she said, smiling faintly. "I think that's when I started to like you." The words floated there. No games. No denial. She didn't mean it in some childish, sister crush way. Not anymore. It was an admission, a deep one, and I felt it settle in my chest like a key clicking into a lock. "You've changed," I said. "So have you." I reached out, almost without realizing it, and brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. She closed her eyes at the touch. When she opened them, she didn't look away. Mark, she whispered, uncertain. I stepped around the island slowly, moving closer. Not rushing. Not assuming. I gave her space to stop me. A chance to breathe and break the spell. She didn't. Her chin tilted up, eyes searching mine for a flicker of doubt. There wasn't any. I leaned in, slow, deliberate, and kissed her. Soft at first. Curious. A question posed without words. She answered it. Her lips moved against mine, hesitant but hungry. Our hands found each other in the space between us. Hers sliding up my chest, mine resting at her waist, fingers curling into fabric and skin. The kiss deepened. We forgot to breathe. I backed her gently into the counter. Our bodies pressed close, the kitchen spinning around us. Her hand moved to my neck, fingertips tracing the line of my jaw like she'd been thinking about it for years. We pulled apart only for air. And even then, not for long. She kissed me again, harder this time, with the kind of desperation you don't fake. Like something had been dammed up inside her and was finally flooding out. I lifted her onto the counter, her legs wrapping around me. Her breath hitched when I pressed into her, and she pulled me closer, her hands bunching in my shirt. God, she whispered. This is so wrong. I know, but it feels right. I finished. She nodded, forehead resting against mine. Her eyes were closed, lips parted, and I could feel her heartbeat against my chest. We stayed like that, in the middle of the dark kitchen, with only the hum of the fridge and the echo of our shared breath between us. Eventually, she pulled back, barely. We shouldn't, she said, her voice a trembling whisper. I searched her face. You want to stop? No, she said. I don't know how we do this. We don't have to figure it out tonight. But we crossed a line, she added. I think we crossed it days ago. She let out a small, sad laugh. Yeah, maybe. I helped her down gently, and she smoothed her hair with shaking hands. Her lips were swollen, her cheeks flushed, and she looked up at me with a storm behind her eyes. This is real, isn't it? She asked. I nodded. It was never just a game. She stared at me for a long moment. Even if it started as one. Yes. Something shifted in her expression, like she wanted to believe me, and maybe already did. Then she took my hand, gave it a small squeeze, and stepped away. I should go to bed, she whispered. I nodded, even though every part of me wanted to follow her. Good night, she said softly. Night, Claire. She paused at the doorway, turned back once, as if she wanted to say more, and then disappeared down the hall. I stood there in the dark, heart pounding, mouth still tasting her kiss. And in that silence, the weight of what we'd done finally settled. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't shame. It was inevitability. We were falling. Fast. And deep. And now, there was no turning back. 7 days. That's how long it had been since I said the words that shattered everything. I bet I can make your sister fall in love with me in just a week. I'd said it in anger, in pain, but I'd meant it. And now, a week later, the game had turned into something far more dangerous than either of us expected. Claire was in the backyard, sitting on the edge of the porch steps, knees pulled into her chest, sunlight catching in her hair. She looked peaceful, but her eyes betrayed her. She'd barely slept. I hadn't either. We both knew today couldn't pass like the others. Natalie was inside, nursing a hangover and her wounded pride. She'd gone out again last night, came home around 2 a.m., perfume and bad decisions clinging to her like a second skin. She didn't ask where I was, didn't care that I wasn't in bed. We were past the point of pretending. I stepped out onto the porch and sat beside Claire. You okay? I asked. She gave a hollow smile. Define okay. I meant what I said. I told her. Back in the kitchen. It wasn't just a bet. She nodded slowly. I believe you. A long pause followed. But I also know it started that way, she added quietly. It started with anger. I corrected. But it ended with you. She glanced at me, eyes full of something I hadn't seen before. Not just affection, but fear. Do you think she knows? Claire asked. She's not stupid, I said. She's arrogant, not blind. Claire nodded. So what now? I didn't have an answer. Not a clean one. Not a safe one. But I knew we couldn't keep pretending. So I stood. It's time. Claire stayed where she was, hugging her knees. You sure? No, I admitted. But I'm done lying. I walked back inside, the screen door creaking behind me like it was announcing war. Natalie was on the couch, scrolling through her phone like she hadn't already checked every app twice. She looked up when I walked in, not surprised, not hostile, just waiting. "You look serious," she said, setting her phone down. "I am." She crossed her arms. "Let me guess. Another lecture about betrayal?" "No," I said. "This time it's about the truth." She sat up straighter, sensing something in my tone. "Okay, you remember that bet I made?" I asked. Her lip curled. "The one where you tried to play Romeo with my sister?" "Yeah. What about it?" "I didn't try," I said. "I succeeded." Silence. No gasp. No yell. Just her mouth twitching into a confused half-smile. "I don't believe you." "Ask her." That was the moment Claire walked in. Natalie's head snapped toward her, eyes narrowing. "Claire, please tell me he's lying." Claire didn't speak right away. She stepped forward slowly, like she was walking into a burning room. "I'm not going to lie," Claire said, voice soft but steady. "I feel something for him. I didn't expect to. I didn't plan to. But it's real." Natalie stood, eyes wide with disbelief. "You're joking." "I wish I were," Claire said. "But I can't pretend anymore." Natalie looked between us, stunned. You actually slept with him?" "No," I said firmly. "We didn't. Not yet." Claire added, "But we kissed. And I wanted it. Every second of it." Natalie let out a bitter laugh. "So this is it. You're both proud of yourselves?" "No," I said. "But I'm not sorry either. Because you threw away our marriage the night you got drunk and screwed a stranger to win a bet. You turned my pain into entertainment." Natalie's voice cracked. "That's not the same." "No," I agreed. "It's not. Because you betrayed trust. I just gave you a taste of your own poison." She looked at Claire, eyes filled with something close to horror. "You were supposed to be my sister." Claire's voice trembled. "And you were supposed to respect your husband." Natalie's hand flew to her mouth, as if trying to keep everything from spilling out at once. The rage, the disbelief, the humiliation. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "You think this makes you better than me?" "No," I said. "But it makes us even." She shook her head. No, it doesn't. You crossed a line that can't be uncrossed." "So did you," I said. "Only difference is, you laughed while I broke. You called it a joke while I was dying inside. And now? Now it's your turn to feel what that's like." Natalie turned her glare back to Claire. "You're not family anymore." Claire didn't flinch. "Maybe I never really was. Not to you." And then the silence came. Not angry. Not loud. Just cold. Final. Natalie walked out of the room, her footsteps heavy on the stairs, and the sound of her door slamming echoed through the house like the end of a chapter. Claire looked at me, eyes shining but dry. "I didn't mean to hurt her," she whispered. "I know. I just couldn't stop it." Neither could I. She stepped closer, and I reached out, taking her hand. It fit perfectly. Outside, the sky had turned the color of ash. Storm clouds rolled across the horizon. The week had ended, just like I said it would. Only I hadn't realized the bet wasn't just about revenge. It was about destruction. And we'd both won, and lost, more than we ever expected. The next morning started with silence, the kind that hums with anticipation like a wire stretched too tight. I could hear Natalie pacing upstairs, her movements sharp and deliberate. Slamming drawers, flipping hangers. She was planning something. I didn't know what, but it had weight. And Claire barely touched her toast. She stared at it like it might accuse her. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, sunlight spilling through the window, golden and undeserved. "You okay?" I asked her. She nodded without looking at me. No, neither of us tried to pretend anymore. The fallout had begun, and all we could do was brace ourselves for where the debris would land. At 9:14 a.m., the storm arrived. Natalie descended the stairs like a woman possessed, phone in hand, dressed in jeans and a tight black tank top. No makeup, hair pulled back into a messy bun. She looked raw, feral, even. There was something in her eyes I hadn't seen in years. Claire sat up straighter. I stayed seated, finishing my coffee. "So," Natalie said, planting herself in front of the table, "you two decided to just King announce it, huh?" Claire's voice was steady. "We told the truth." Natalie's laugh was so sharp it could have cut glass. "Oh, you told the truth. That's rich. What a noble little sister moment." I leaned back, trying to stay calm. "Natalie, you don't get to. Don't you dare tell me what I get to do," she snapped, eyes wild. "You've been playing some twisted little game under my roof. Making moves on my sister just to prove a point? I didn't make her feel anything, I said. She did that on her own. Claire stood now, her voice rising. And don't act like you're the victim here. You cheated first. Natalie rounded on her. With a stranger? Not someone I grew up with. Not family. You laughed about it, Claire said, stepping forward. You came home bragging like it was some kind of trophy. You humiliated him. And me. You think this is about you? Natalie shouted. You're just the idiot who fell for a married man. Who was already betrayed. Claire snapped. You broke him first. I just picked up the pieces. The room pulsed with heat. My pulse thundered in my ears. Natalie turned to me again. You think this is love? You think what you two have is anything but trauma and bitterness wrapped in lust? I think, I said slowly, it's more honest than anything you and I had in years. That hit her like a slap. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her chest heaved with shallow, furious breaths. Claire stepped between us. Natalie, just stop. No, she spat. I want to hear him say it. Say it to my face. You really in love with her? I didn't blink. Yes. Claire stiffened beside me, but didn't speak. She didn't need to. Natalie stared at me like she didn't recognize me. Maybe she didn't. Maybe I didn't either. You're disgusting, she whispered. I shrugged. You taught me how. That was the final match. Natalie lunged toward Claire. Not to hit her, not exactly, but to invade. She grabbed her wrist, hissed something under her breath that I couldn't hear, and Claire ripped herself free with a sharp jerk. Don't touch me, Claire said, voice shaking now. Not ever again. You ruined everything, Natalie growled. You're not my sister. You're AF * king parasite. Claire stepped back. And you're a narcissist. You broke him and laughed in his face. You deserve to lose. Lose? Natalie shrieked. You think this was a competition? Wasn't it? Claire said bitterly. That's how you treated it. Natalie turned to me one last time. This is on you. You started this. No, I said. You did. The second you unzipped your dress in that Vegas hotel room, you started this. The quiet that followed was brutal. Natalie stormed out of the kitchen, heels clicking even though she wasn't wearing any. She disappeared upstairs. Within minutes, bags thumped against the stairs. Claire and I stood frozen as Natalie came down with 2 suitcases and her gym bag. I'm staying at Sasha's, she announced. I want your shit out of the house by the end of the week. You're kicking me out, I said, almost amused. She met my gaze with fire. You made this house a joke. I don't want to breathe the same air. Good, I said. It's easier to breathe without lies in it. She walked to the door, then stopped. You'll regret this, she said, looking between us. Both of you. Claire held my hand now. No, she replied. We already regret staying silent for so long. Natalie slammed the door so hard it rattled the picture frames. And just like that, she was gone. The house felt eerily still. I looked at Claire. She looked at me. You okay? I asked. She gave a hollow laugh. Ask me in a year. I reached for her. She came willingly, burying her face into my chest. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, What now? I didn't know, but I knew we'd burned the bridge behind us. And all that remained was forward. I didn't expect the news to spread so fast. But I should have. Natalie had always been good at one thing, controlling the narrative. By Monday morning, the story had already mutated. According to her, Claire was a backstabbing slut, I was a manipulative monster, and our affair had begun months before Vegas. A full-blown betrayal plotted beneath her nose. She painted herself as a heartbroken wife, blindsided by the 2 people she trusted most. People ate it up. We began losing friends in waves. First were the couples who sided with Natalie without hesitation. Jason and Tiff stopped answering our texts. Matt, a guy I'd played poker with for years, removed me from the group chat without a word. Then came the vague social media posts. You think you know people. Family doesn't mean loyalty anymore. Claire deleted her accounts by the second day. I followed the next. There was no point shouting into a crowd that had already picked their villain. Strangely, the ones who stayed silent said more than anyone. My brother, who barely said a word during my marriage, simply texted, I get it. Claire's mom, yes, her own mother, called just to say, don't let her twist this into something it's not. I saw how Natalie treated you. I saw how she made you feel invisible. It wasn't validation we were looking for, but it helped. Still, the hardest part was watching Claire take the brunt of it. She didn't cry, not at first. She held herself upright with the kind of composure that comes from years of swallowing her own needs. But I saw it in the way she stopped humming when she cooked, in how she lingered by the window, staring at the driveway like someone she loved might still pull in and forgive her. "She's your sister," I said one night, as we lay on the couch, tangled together, her head on my chest. "She was," Claire whispered, "but I don't think she ever saw me as one." "You sure about that?" Claire nodded. She loved having someone beneath her. She loved being admired, envied, obeyed. I was her shadow, and now that I've stepped into the light, she can't stand it. Claire didn't respond, but she didn't need to. What we had now was messy, complicated. The lines between revenge and romance blurred in a way that didn't fit any neat box. And yet, when I looked at her, really looked, I saw more than my wife's sister. I saw the person who stayed, the one who listened, the one who made me feel like I mattered again. We tried to reclaim something close to normal in the days that followed. Coffee in the mornings, walks around the neighborhood where people stared but didn't speak. We found ourselves laughing at things again, small, stupid things, and each time we did, I felt something healing beneath the guilt. But there were cracks. One night, as we made dinner together, Claire went quiet mid-stir. "What if this doesn't work?" she asked suddenly. I set down the knife. "What do you mean? What if all of this, the fire, the passion, the chaos, what if it's just fallout? What if we're only clinging to each other because everything else exploded?" I stepped closer, wrapping my arms around her from behind. "Then let it explode," I said softly. "Let the whole world burn. I still want you." She turned to face me, eyes searching mine. "But what if I'm not enough?" "You already are." It wasn't the perfect answer. It wasn't some grand speech. But it was honest. And that mattered now more than anything. By the end of the week, we'd packed up most of my things from the house. Natalie hadn't returned. She'd sent a lawyer instead, a young, smug guy who handed over a letter saying she was filing for divorce and expected full ownership of the house. I laughed when I read it. Claire didn't. "She's going to make this ugly," she warned. She already did. Still, I agreed to move out. Not because she won, but because I needed distance. I needed to stop breathing in the stale air of a life that had been dying long before Vegas. Claire came with me. We found a furnished rental in a quiet part of town, nothing fancy. Just 2 bedrooms, clean walls, and silence we hadn't earned yet. It was there, in that quiet, that the truth began to settle. This wasn't just a rebound. This was something we chose, after the wreckage, after the shame, after the world turned its back. One night, as we lay in bed, the room lit only by the blue glow of the streetlight outside, Claire whispered, "Do you think they'll ever forgive us?" "Probably not." She exhaled. "Do you care?" I thought about it. About the friends I'd lost. About the family dinners that would never happen again. About how every holiday from now on would come with an asterisk. Then I turned to her, brushing my thumb along her jaw. "No," I said, "because for the first time in years, I'm not pretending." She didn't say anything. She just kissed me. Not like before. Not like a secret. But like a truth. A raw, difficult, and beautiful truth. There's something strange about the quiet that comes after chaos. It isn't peace. Not exactly. It's more like the ringing in your ears after a bomb goes off. You're alive, sure, but you still flinch at every sound. You still wonder if the ground beneath you will hold. That's how life felt in the months that followed the divorce. The legal side moved faster than expected. Natalie didn't fight me for much. I think she wanted the process over quickly, the chapter closed, the pages torn out. She kept the house, the car, most of the furniture. I didn't argue. I let it all go. The real loss had already happened long before the paperwork. Our social circle, what little remained, shifted into 2 distinct camps, hers and silence. People chose safety over truth, comfort over complexity. I couldn't blame them. Nobody wants to sit too close to a fire. Even the ones who agreed with me, who understood, kept their distance. Claire lost more than I did. Her relationship with her sister was unsalvageable. There was no reconciliation, no dramatic apology, no teary-eyed reunion. Just the cold, hard wall of betrayal between them, built brick by brick on years of unspoken tension. She cried once. Not for Natalie, exactly, but for what should have been. For the version of sisterhood she never got to have. "I didn't steal you," she said to me one night, curled up on our new couch, legs tucked beneath her. "She just let you go." "I know," I replied. But it doesn't make it hurt any less. Some nights were harder than others. There were still whispers. People who thought this whole thing had been about sex, about ego, about revenge. And maybe, at the beginning, it was. But now it was about survival, about choosing something real, even if it came wrapped in guilt. I thought back to that night in Vegas often. The neon lights, the laughter, the way my heart cracked when I saw her disappear into that hotel elevator with a stranger. That was the moment my marriage ended. Not when she confessed, not when we argued, but right then, in the casino, when I realized she didn't think I was enough. She gambled our life together just to prove a point, and I made a gamble of my own. But mine had taken me somewhere different, somewhere terrifying, honest, and deeply human. Claire and I moved forward slowly. We didn't rush into declarations of forever. We didn't chase some fairy tale ending to justify everything we'd lost. What we built was quieter, smaller, but it was ours. We started over. Weekend drives with no destination, cooking together like it meant something. Even the arguments felt different, not like threats, but like two people trying, really trying. One night, nearly a year later, we sat on the balcony of a small mountain cabin we'd rented for a weekend getaway. The sky was ink black, pinpricked with stars. A bottle of wine sat between us, mostly empty. Claire pulled her knees up to her chest and looked at me. "Do you think people change?" she asked. I took a breath. "I think people wake up. And once they do, they can't go back to sleep." She smiled softly. "I feel awake." "So do I." She hesitated, then reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled something out. A coin. A silver poker chip, the kind they give out at fancy Vegas tables. It was engraved with a name and a date. The night it all began. "Found this in my suitcase months ago," she said, handing it to me. I kept it. I turned it over in my hand. "Why?" She shrugged. "To remind myself of how easy it is to bet everything without realizing what you're risking." I set the chip on the table beside us. "I made a bet too," I said. She looked at me. "I bet that I could make you fall for me in a week." "I remember. And I won." Claire laughed, shaking her head. "Cocky bastard." "But that's not the bet that matters anymore." She tilted her head. No, I said. "Because now I'm betting that this, what we have, can last. Not a week, not a year, but something real, something earned." She didn't answer right away. She looked out over the trees, the stars reflected in her eyes. Then she turned to me. "Then I'm betting too." We clinked our glasses together, not in celebration, but in quiet agreement. A pact made not with fanfare, but with full awareness of everything it had cost to get here. Later that night, as we lay in bed, limbs tangled, breath soft and steady, I thought about what it meant to win. Not just the bet, not just the girl, but myself. Because somewhere between betrayal and reckoning, between anger and surrender, I'd stopped chasing justice and started chasing peace. And I'd found it, in the least expected place, with the least expected person. We were two gamblers who had nothing left to lose. And somehow, that made our love the safest bet of all.